expectations about this meeting do not seem to be very high.
I think that's putting it mildly. You might have thought that Xi Jinping, having been strengthened domestically, he got re-elected as leader of the Chinese Communist Party back in the Congress in October, plus consolidated his power in the Politburo Standing Committee. Expectations the next year he'll be reappointed as president. I mean, this could be for life for him. You would have thought that perhaps with that consolidation of power, he might feel sufficiently confident that he would ease up on relations with the United States. Not at all. If anything, he's been toughening the policies. During the Congress speeches, for instance, he was talking about the need to get tough on Taiwan. He warned of storms ahead and choppy waters. So the mood music coming out of China since the October Congress has been pretty hostile. And from the US side as well, there's no sign that Joe Biden is prepared to back down. On the contrary, there seems to be a changing perception in the United States. So where there was hope in the past that China might be coming towards the West, that the development of the Chinese economy would change the way the Chinese related to the West, it would become more liberal, more open, and so on and so forth. I think that is all over now. The perception is in the United States in particular that China is becoming a hostile protagonist, and right across the board. So the mood music that I was talking about before applies on both sides. It's not just China being hostile towards the United States. There is a growing perception, which is bipartisan in the United States. So both Republicans and Democrats have a perception increasingly of China as the most dangerous threat to the United States. And given that, despite the fact that both sides recognize that they have to talk to each other, given that, it's very difficult to see that there's going to be very much progress made, despite all the talk of the personal chemistry maybe beginning to work. It just doesn't seem to be happening.
So can you tell us why that is then, Rob? What are some of the main differences between the two sides?
Well, the one that stands out, obviously, is Taiwan. Xi Jinping is set on incorporating Taiwan into the Chinese mainland. He's talking about by 2050, 2049, achieving all his goals for China. And that includes the incorporation of Taiwan. The United States is certainly under Joe Biden is not prepared to let that happen. We've heard Joe Biden going beyond previous US policy. In the past, the United States was always prepared to talk about the one China policy, making a sort of concession to the Chinese. Joe Biden has on at least 4 occasions gone beyond that to say, look, if China were to attack Taiwan, the United States would come to the defense of Taiwan. That has enraged the Chinese. And then we had that visit by Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, to Taiwan, which led to a very harsh response from the Chinese. They carried out military exercises that went into Taiwanese airspace and genuinely made the environment, the military environment about Taiwan extremely hostile. The expectation is that if the Republicans win the House in the next few days, that Kevin McCarthy will become Speaker of the House, and he is already promising that he will make a visit to Taiwan. That will make the situation, the relationship between China and the United States even more difficult than it is at present. Another main area is trade. There was an expectation that when Joe Biden came into power that he would soften up some of the tariffs imposed by Donald Trump in the previous administration. Not a bit of it. It just hasn't happened. On the contrary, Joe Biden has toughened up some of Trump's policies. He's introduced the Chip and Science Act, which makes it much harder for the Chinese to get access to US technology, which has made available billions for investment in the development of technology for American entrepreneurs, provided they do not invest any more in China. The Chinese are watching this and increasingly see the United States as being hostile towards them, plus the US policy on developing alliances in Southeast Asia. The Chinese see increasingly, just as the US sees China as hostile, China sees the US as hostile.
So is it all negative? Are there some areas at all where Joe Biden and Xi Jinping can make compromise?
Well, not an awful lot of areas, I think, is the honest answer. This is not yet the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. Things haven't got to that stage. And, you know, there is always in international politics the room for personal chemistry. The fact that Joe Biden and Xi Jinping do have quite a lot of experience of each other. You know, when Joe Biden was vice president in 2012, 2013, he had a lot of meetings with Xi Jinping before Xi Jinping became leader of the Communist Party in China. So you know, there is some grounds for, you know, for that, but in the sort of grand scheme of things, it's difficult to see at this stage where things can really move forward. A little bit perhaps on climate change, although the Chinese even there have rode back over the past few months. But you know, there is that understanding, I think, on both sides that they do have to talk to each other, and therein, I suppose, lies the hope.
Well, we'll see if that happens, because as we just saw there in those live pictures, Xi Jinping and his wife have just touched down and arrived in Bali. We see him shaking hands with officials there.